Hey, what's up guys? So in this episode of Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! We're going to be talking about learning your opponent's back row. So essentially you are going to be guessing your opponent's back row, but it is a guess based off of different factors, so you'll have a higher chance of guessing what the card is. So let's just start off with this simple example of Light Pulsar. So let's say that they have one back row, you summon Light Pulsar, it goes through, they don't have a response, and you've attacked them for 3 turns. Eventually, your opponent decides that they want to set one more card. So this card over here, the pink one, is a card that they just set. Now, what does that mean? After this card has been face down for several times, that can reveal that it is several things. It can reveal that it is something like Royal Decree, which they cannot use. So it's basically just a card that they simply cannot use. Or it could be a card like Mirror Force, which does not stop Light Pulsar, essentially, because if Light Pulsar already has the target, then essentially Mirror Force is not going to do anything. But it can also reveal that it is finally something that can answer Light Pulsar. So my suggestion to you, if you've already summoned Light Pulsar successfully, that probably means that that face down card is not a Solemn Warning, and if you've attacked several times, it is something that essentially isn't really usable or viable for them now. So if you do happen to have the MST in your hand, I would suggest hitting the card that they just set, because if you've attacked several times and nothing's really happened, then that reveals that that card does not answer Light Pulsar, essentially. So keep that in mind as well. Now, next up, and the face down was a heavy storm. But next up, I want to talk about times where your opponent must they must activate Solemn Warning, essentially, because if they do not, they will lose the card anyway. So, for example, we will talk about Solemn Warning and basically things where your opponent will have to negate. So these are 2 simple examples, also Breaker would be an excellent example, of a card essentially, unless they have Effect Veiler, they will have to essentially Solemn Warning the Inzektor Dragonfly or the Judgment Dragon. And the reason why, basically, in most scenarios, unless they have some odd reason of why they want to do that, so keep that in mind. Basically, they will activate Solemn Warning if you summon Judgment Dragon or Dragonfly. The reason why they must activate it is basically because they're going to lose that card anyways. If they do not activate it, they lose the card. So an excellent simple example would be something like Breaker the Magical Warrior. If they only have one face down, they must Solemn Warning unless they have an Effect Veiler. Keep that in mind also, because Effect Veiler is also a trap that hits stuff like that. Or something like Tour Guide. Tour Guide doesn't have to be warning. It depends on the deck also. But majority of the time, if Tour Guide is summoned, they will activate Solemn Warning unless they have a response like Effect Veiler. So if this card is face down and you summon Tour Guide or you summon another card like Card D and your opponent activates an Effect Veiler, that can still reveal that that face down card is going to be something like Solemn Warning. Because these cards after their Effect Veiler, they can't really do anything. They're just kind of sitting there. They don't have very much attack anyways, so these both are cards where it can reveal that your opponent still does have a Solemn Warning if they Effect Veiler you. Next up, I want to talk about using Solemn Warning early on in the game, where you can read basically if they have it or not. Basically, you're going to have to find out the hard way, essentially. If you summon Stratos, majority of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, they will activate Solemn Warning immediately on Stratos, just because E-Heroes is a deck where if you run the Gemini Sparks and Hero Blasts, if you do not have that alias early on, you could simply lose because you have conjunctional cards and you don't have the cards required to activate the other cards. So you'll essentially lose simply just because your opponent Solemn Warnings a Stratos. Now, Stratos I know isn't very strong. I mean, he's not a card that you have to worry about, but it is something that nets an advantage in the game early on. So say, for example, that they have one back row. And I can show you other cards, which I can reveal that is probably not these cards that they want to activate against Stratos. So they could essentially have these cards face down. They could have Bottomless, Deep Prison, or Mirror Force, which essentially can, stop Stratos. Let's say that they have, all these back rows. Let's say your opponent has Solemn Warning, Bottomless, Deep Prison, and Mirror Force, and you summon Stratos. What are they going to activate? They're going to activate the Solemn Warning. And the reason is because Bottomless, I mean, you could Bottomless Stratos, you can Deep Prison Stratos, you can Mirror Force Stratos, but Stratos already added the +1, which is the reason why they would Solemn Warning. And essentially, that's how you can find out if they have a Solemn Warning. Basically, you have to find out by essentially summoning it, which is fine. I mean, maybe you have a Miracle Fusion when you want to use. Sure, the card can get Bottomless later on, but majority of the time, Stratos is the card that will bait out the warning. So if you want to basically get rid of a warning, you can pretty much get rid of it basically by summoning Stratos. Or let's say, for example, another card. If you're going for like Dino Rabbit, basically, when you go for Logia, that will reveal that they do not have a Solemn Warning face down. Sure, they could have something like Bottomless, but I'm sure that they would have Bottomless the 2 normal monsters that you bring out with Rescue Rabbit first before you go for your Logia. So those are some simple ways that you can read how your opponent is just setting some cards. But another example I want to show off is the false commit to the field. So for example, let's say that my opponent over here is going to set 2 cards. So they set 2 cards, and what I can do now, essentially, is my opponent essentially will not read if I set something like a Heavy Storm and a Solemn Warning. Because, first off, majority of the time, if there's a way to plus off of Heavy Storm, they will do that, and so most of the time, you want to get your advantages with Heavy Storm as quickly as possible. It's a good thing to do. But, you can, change the game completely by holding Heavy Storm until you have game, or you can essentially use it when you can plus a lot more. So, for example, my opponent sets 2, ends his turn. Then I can then set 2 and end my turn, because what I can do now is, if they summon anything, I can activate Solemn Warning, and then they might feel more comfortable to set another card. And at that point, I activate Heavy Storm, and I essentially plussed even more off of that. So those are ways you can kind of trick your opponent into, setting more cards. But reading cards is definitely something where if you've summoned, let's say, let's do Light Pulsar, because it's just an excellent example. If they've had a face down card, I've attacked several times, I know right now that probably is not a Deep Prison. But if they have something else like Mirror Force, let's say that they've had Mirror Force on here forever, and I keep on attacking. They don't want to activate it because it's not live at the moment. And if then they set another card, and then let's say they set another card, that will reveal sometimes that they have one card that can actually protect them. And that is something that you're going to have to essentially guess based off of educated guesses. Majority of the time, I would say you can generally try to hit the one on the left, because it's just something that a lot of players will do, just because it's closer to where they want to activate it. As far as if they are right-handed, majority of the players will set on their right side, but since your opponent is facing the opposite direction, it's going to be on this side majority of the time. So keep that in mind as well when you are playing. And I know in Dueling Network it sets them automatically, so it's kind of harder to guess. But essentially, what I'm saying is when your opponent has a card that you've attacked multiple times with and they have not activated it, and you've summoned something good like Tour Guide, that reveals that one of those cards is not a Solemn Warning, basically. Or anything that can really answer what you have essentially on the field. Or it's just something that they just don't have, like a Gemini Spark, and they just don't have the alias. They're just setting it essentially to make a bluff. And then possibly they might set, like, a Deep Prison, just so, like, if you do have the Mystical Space Typhoon, that you would not essentially hit the one that they just set. Because generally that does happen a lot. I'm sure you guys understand that. I hope this gives you guys a better understanding of when your opponent is essentially bluffing you. Like, if you've attacked successfully with Light Pulsar several times, and, they have, like, one card that's completely useless, and they just go, okay, now I'm going to set 4. Usually that reveals that either one, they have no answers, which, we don't have to even worry about anyways, you just attack, or it reveals that they do have an answer, and your best bet is to not MSC the one that's already been set for several turns and they have not activated it, because it could be something like Solemn Warning where they just don't have the life points to activate it, or it could be something like Mystical Space Typhoon, or something, again, which is a conjunctional card that they cannot use. So I hope this gives you guys a better understanding of when your opponent is essentially bluffing you with more cards, which can happen quite often. And also when your opponent has Solemn Warning, because that is a very important trap card to know when your opponent has, because you do not want to go for your important cards when you know that there is a Solemn Warning face down. Unless you want to bait it out, like excellent example, again, was summoning Stratos first turn will bait out any warnings, pretty much. Unless they have Valor, because they can Valor Stratos as well, and that's basically the only card that they will really want to hit in E-Heroes anyways. Or, basically, again, like I mentioned earlier, when your opponent must activate Solemn Warning. So keep that in mind as well. When something would destroy Solemn Warning, that reveals that they do not have Solemn Warning down, essentially. because even if they have 2 back row, regardless if the back row is like good or not, let's say for example, we'll put like they're bluffing like a heavy storm. If I summon Breaker the Magical Warrior, they will hands down warning because they are in a position where if they don't, they will go minus. Unless they have some plan, they're going to mind control your Breaker next turn and they're going to like OTK you. So keep that in mind. These are more general and these are more for, I don't really want to say beginners, but I would say just more of a general example, whereas if you play someone that really knows what they're doing, they will sometimes do stuff that they don't want to do just to bluff you. Like for example, a lot of top players in high level will actually set Heavy Storm and multiple back row that they can instantly activate just so you can feel comfortable setting, and then they can win off of a Heavy Storm. But generally, this is just more for general play, I would say. But yeah, so I hope this helps you guys out, and if you have any suggestions or for reading back row, let me know in the comment section below. But those are just the most common ones I've seen, and through my experiences, the ones that I've experienced. So thanks for watching, guys. Asian Eyes White Dragon, signing out.